Welcome to Footnotes of History, the podcast that sifts through the detritus of the past so that you don't have to get your hands dirty. With you as always are myself, Daniel Nesbitt, and the Chief Surveyor of Historical Sewage, Tim Philpott.
The Chief? That's so ridiculous. Chief Surveyor of Historical Sewage.
Yep.
That's
So
sort
it's
of like...
episode appropriate.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. It's just historical sewage. Yeah, we're going to be talking quite a lot of crap in this episode. But
as we always do.
Yeah.
But this time it's relevant.
Yeah, this time we actually have a point. Yeah. So today's episode is on the Great Stink, which is one summer in London in the 1858. Yeah. When, well, essentially, go on.
It got too bad to live near the Thames because, as it was described by Dickens, just crossing over on a bridge was heart and stomach distending, heart and stomach distending nature. So yeah, I think that paints a horrific picture.
And the reason being,
well,
because the Thames was basically an open sewer.
Yeah. Because everyone thought throwing bodies, excrement, and industrial waste into a river was going to do nothing bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about where you first got fired up for this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is going to be a classic episode. Actually, So, my sort of semi-inspiration for the episode came from I saw a speech by Lord Adonis, who was I think he's a Labour peer, possibly crossbench peer, but he's also, I think he was very until recently, he flounced out in disgust basically at Brexit or something. But
he's a grandee, as New
Labour grandee. He was the chair of the Infrastructure Commission, and he gave a speech at the Institution of Civil Engineers in June 2017. Named "Reclaiming the Victorian Spirit," which it just sort of it propagated some of the stories of this particular incident in history, which I just don't think they don't see the whole picture. Essentially, it's like London was a mess, then we fixed it. That's the story, but actually, why was London a mess? That kind of thing. I think I'm more interested in that. What was the build up to this particular event? It's not like we all suddenly woke up in summer of 1858 and thought, oh wow, London is a tip kind of thing.
Yeah, we need to do something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
well, hopefully this episode will tell people.
Yeah, exactly, indeed. So should we? Yeah. So talking of the Thames, should we move on to a bit of a description?
Yeah. So I think one of the best people to speak on this is one of my favourite authors, Charles Dickens, and his descriptions of London. I've got a couple of them here. One from my favourite book, Little Dorrit, where he describes the sort of close surroundings of the Thames and the Thames itself. So he said, miles of close wells and pits of houses where the inhabitants gasped for air stretched far away towards every point of the compass. Through the heart of the town, a deadly sewer ebbed and flowed in place of a fine fresh river. So automatically thinking this dark kind of force that's going through the middle of the Thames, just full of all kind of horrific stuff. And then looking at a chapter,
it seems like it feels like a version of hell.
It does.
If you think about it, like literally, like just horror.
Yeah, and if you hold that sort of image in your mind in a chapter of David Copperfield called The River, and again talking about the Thames, he kind of elaborates on that exact thing. So he paints just a horrific scene of just decomposition, of weeds growing up, broken down houses along the shoreline, abandoned rotting ships just left to basically decay.
Yeah.
And then factories spewing smoke and horrific stuff into the air, but also all their waste into the river as well.
Yeah.
And then kind of like it all culminates Dickens and the Thames into Our Mutual Friend, which is one of his last completed book.
Yeah. Where
the Thames is almost like a character of its own. It's all throughout the book.
Yeah,
it's a dark, almost dark sort of force, and it's a scene of murder. It's a scene of bodies being washed up, crime, decay, all this type of stuff.
I suppose with so much crap in there, you wouldn't notice if a body washed up.
Yeah, exactly. And they regularly did, I think. And then also in the illustrations that accompany Our Mutual Friend, there's like scenes on the mud flats, which with banks of the Thames. It's in pelting rain, and bodies being discovered there, and just sort of like darkness. Really, is the overwhelming thing of the Thames in Our Mutual Friend. So I think from those three quick extracts, we see the Thames not being sort of like the not nice, but kind of generally not a malign force that we see now in London. It's actually a horrifying.
Well, I think it's sort of neutral at the moment. You know it's sort of like it's quite nice to get a boat on the Thames and walk across the bridge or something. You wouldn't go for a swim.
Yeah, you wouldn't go for a swim or drink from it. But like back in the day, back in the 1850s when Dickens was around, you wouldn't want to go near it.
Yeah. So quite a lot of some of these Punch cartoons you've got from the time.
Yeah, I think if you can find some, we might put some up on the website, because they just definitely show you what people thought of it at the time as
Yeah. The episode page for this episode is going to be footnotesofhistory.com/10 for everyone's information. And yeah, I'll put a few of those cartoons on. One of my another one that I saw was it was interesting. It said the Thames was personified as this almost malevolent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and some of these cartoons have. It's like Father Thames or something. It's like
old Father Thames, like the river god.
Yeah. Like that. It's just like a disaster. Yeah, just horrific. But anyway, and then also the silent highwayman, which is obviously just death. A canoeing down the Thames, disaster situation. But it gives you a sort of punchy picture of the time. But I feel like we should. Obviously, 1858 was a trigger moment for the reform for action about this problem. Do you think we should talk about the context of this, the build-up towards this?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Just give us paint a brief picture of the time, why people were starting to become a little bit more socially conscious.
Well, I think especially in terms of when it comes to the people in charge, the powers that be, the government, for example, there is a bit of a change around this period. You have there is a series of sort of events, essentially, which you can sort of see as potentially having an effect here. There's the Great Reform Act, which means that, to a certain extent, people are, or politicians at least, are more aware of their constituents. Not as much as they would be now, of course. Because the Great Reform Act, although so named, barely did anything to extend the franchise beyond, a small percentage of the population. It certainly wasn't universal suffrage.
Yeah.
Then you have the Irish potato famine, which Lord John Russell was roundly criticised for not doing anything about. Although, in total fairness to him, not sure exactly what it was that he was supposed to do. 1848, the year of revolution, obviously around Europe, discontent generally everywhere. Chartists, in Britain, obviously no revolution per se, but the Chartists were out on Kennington Common doing drills and stuff.
I think you also find
intimidating
during being a menace, but
just generally a menace.
Also in this time, you start seeing more of an informed, almost middle class developing. Intelligentsia, which can sort of bridge the gap between the people who have the power in terms of the aristocracy and the old landowners who have dominated politics, and the downtrodden sort of masses who don't really have any sort of say. In 1848, during Europe, I think one of the key things was the fusing of the people who could articulate discontent and the people who had discontent. Definitely, I think that's what we see also to a lesser extent here in terms of talking about social issues. People have issues. They didn't really have an outlet to start talking about them until this time almost, when people were regularly talking about these, spreading ideas through journals and newspapers and that type of thing. People would be able to see what the issues were like. I
think it's also, you could also see it in the politics of the period as well. When we're talking about the build up to 1858, you have, like I said, Lord John Russell. He's a Whig Prime Minister, and then the Whigs and there's a sort of a transformation that occurs. The Whigs are no longer a political party; they're reconfigured, and the last Whig Prime Minister is Palmerston up to 1858, and then that's the Whigs are no longer a party. It becomes the Liberal Party. Again, Palmerston, funnily enough, bridging the gap between the two. So it's a different type of politics. The Tories changed into the Conservatives around the time of Peel's first premiership, and it just it's a different makeup of people. The Tories changed from purely aristocrats, into sort of aristocrat, maybe industrialists and landowner, other types
people
of
built up their money.
New money, I suppose. And then the split is no longer industrialists versus landowners. It becomes more, I think, more of a. The Liberals are very much more social reformers, put it that way. Conservatives slightly less so. I mean, they're pro-free. The Peel Conservatives are obviously pro-free trade, that kind of thing. But the new Liberal Party is much more, we're ready to reform. And as you pointed out in Paris, a similar concept is emerging as government is attempting to sort of overhaul the streets and make them better for the poor.
I think that's a good lead in. So we've talked a little bit about what the Thames was like. We talked a little bit about how the times were making people more willing to actually reform. And now I think we should look at the issues that they were trying to reform. So in London and also Paris at the time, there were cities that had developed quite quickly from sort of not medieval towns, but places that were crushed together, but still
organically
developed, but in increasingly more and more people were living there. I think it was up to 3 million people in London were there, but the town, the city could only really support comfortably about 1 million people in terms of actually living quarters and living space. So you're getting many people crushed together.
I think as well, like there is a point to be made that the authorities basically couldn't cope with the influx of new people.
Well, it was kind of they had to almost reconfigure their mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the key things here in this section to talk about are cesspits, which probably in most people's minds is a horrific image, and miasma theory, which I'll come into in a second. But I think, do you want to talk a little bit about what cesspit was?
Exactly. A cesspit is essentially it's a tank under your house, I suppose, that collects all your waste. It's not. It was
not under almost like a district.
Okay, so there's a collective.
Yeah, I think they were I think something like 200,000 in London.
So more than.
So it was like a communal sort of container for all the household waste.
That makes more sense, because I was trying to understand because originally, obviously, we know that the Metropolitan Commissioners of the pre-Metropolitan Commissioners of the sewers, the municipal sort of commissioners of sewers. Sorry for the confusion there, but about sort of 6 or 7 or 8 of these sort of basically borough commissioners of sewers. Yeah. And I was trying to understand what their purpose was, and they deal with the communal cesspits.
Yeah, so I think the key thing with a cesspit is it's not going anywhere unless people literally take it out.
Yes.
So you have to make sure that you are sending people around to empty them on a regular basis. Yeah. And they were quite dangerous in some ways.
Presumably they're big enough as well. I mean,
I think this is the other thing that
it basically is an infrastructure. It is basically an infrastructure planning issue, which
I think this is also going back to the population growth in London at the time, 1 million to 3 million around this area this time. Yeah. The cesspits, I think, were probably configured for a lesser population than they would then have to deal with.
Certainly would be, yeah.
So automatically you're having this massive, huge growth in population. You're having a system of keeping waste which isn't particularly up to it. It's kind of creaking at the seams a bit at this time, because you need to empty it regularly, but there are more people using it at that time. Yeah. And also cesspits, on the one hand, if you didn't empty them quickly or regularly, they were liable to catch fire because of the methane.
There's some horrific consequences.
And also
leak as well.
Leak as well into the water supply in some cases. But I think the fear of cesspits in some ways was concentrated around what is known as miasma theory. Yeah. And this is the idea that various diseases such as cholera, typhoid, typhus, that type of thing, were spread by polluted or unclean air. So if you've got this cesspit basically sat there, in your mind polluting the air, you think that's how diseases are spread, and you're concerned about it. So it's important to point out, in Victorian times, germs weren't really a thing that people were aware of. So people like Florence Nightingale, who we now think of as the great reformer, the first modern nurse, was a big believer in miasma theory because they just didn't know about germs. So she always wanted fresh, clean air coming into the hospitals and wards that she worked on. I think this is something key we need to think about when we think about this problem. If they were trying to solve the issue of polluted air,
they were trying to solve the wrong problem, basically. Yeah.
And do you want to talk a little bit about who?
Who's problem? Yeah, I mean, it is very much a sort of case of there were, like I said before, there were sort of 8 or 9 municipal, basically sort of local government sort of type things that were sort of in charge of dealing with sewer systems across London.
Yeah, and they will have their own kind of regions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think London was built up of small towns which melded together over time, mostly during the period leading up to this point. Places like Tower Hamlets, Poplar and Blackwall, and Holborn and Finsbury. That kind of these areas had their own municipal sewer people who would deal with the problem. But they had this. It is something that you see quite often with sort of governments, as they have a sort of almost slightly acrimonious relationship with their neighbours, and they refuse to work together very effectively. But that's one of the problems. But there's a second problem, which is they don't have, unlike a company would have, they don't have the permission, say, or the private capital to invest in a new system to solve the ongoing problems of the infrastructure falling apart, basically. And also worth mentioning at this point, all the infrastructure is basically made of wood until really the 1850s. Yeah. Which just for comparison, water companies had started transforming their wooden pipes into iron pipes as early as 1802. So, I mean, that gives you an impression of how far behind they are.
So we've got 8 different commissions.
Yeah.
Well, nine different commissions. But 8 of which are then combined into one super commission.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which, again, as you say, to keep up with the formation of London as a unitary body, the Metropolitan Commission of Sewers is formed. Yeah.
1848.
In 1848, which basically abolishes most of the smaller bodies.
Yeah, the City of London kept its own because it's
just the City of
wants
London
to do.
It is always a sort of a slightly unique concept.
And I think the Commission's sort of the Commission's main was Miasma Theory. So they were concerned about the polluting influence of cesspits in many ways and how to deal with it. And their sort of idea was to close all the cesspits, or as many as possible, and then mandate that household waste should go into the sewers of London and then washed into the Thames, basically. And they people who oversaw the commission their main issue was making sure that the sewers were regularly flushed into the Thames to make sure that there would be no build-up of miasma. There would be no build-up of unclean air, which unfortunately meant more waste going into the Thames, more waste going into the water supply as well.
It's quite a strange concept. They obviously didn't see the Thames as part of the system somehow. It was like, once it's in the river, it's not our problem.
It's not a problem to get to see.
But obviously it is a problem because, apart from the obvious one, which obviously it's all in the river, which not only are people using, going along in boats and fishing and that kind of stuff, but some of the water companies were still taking their inlets from places in the river.
And I think this is a key. More waste into it. I think this is key to the spread of cholera in the lead up to this time. So I think you've got a few points to say on cholera, but I think it's key to understanding why people, I think, came to view there being a problem in London. Because from, I think, 1830s onwards, there were sort of sporadic outbreaks of cholera which killed off tens of thousands.
Absolutely. So I was going to say, but there were sort of two things. The one obvious one, which everyone paid attention to because you couldn't really avoid it, was the smell, which, if you believed in Miasma Theory,
was terrifying.
It was horrific. Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're all going to die because we can all smell this horrific perfume, should we say? And then the other one, obviously, is that people are literally dying in their tens of thousands. But again, it's an interesting one because people were dying in their thousands previously. And it's almost like it took the smell and the belief that the smell was responsible for the politicians to act.
And it's quite interesting, actually, how much of a grip miasma theory retained on people in the run-up to it. So, I mean, in the cholera outbreaks, a doctor called John Snow investigated the London, basically investigated why cholera was spreading in London. And he concentrated in an area of Soho called Broad Street, where he removed the handle of the water pump, the cholera water pump, so people couldn't get their water from there. And he observed that cholera didn't spread as fast in that area. So he concluded that it was actually something to do with the water, not to do with the smell or the air, which he was basically ridiculed for it. People were like, no, that's not an issue. And so, unfortunately, people then still concentrated on the idea of germs spreading disease.
Smell spreading disease.
Germs.
Do you know? I don't suppose you know where the water came from for the Broad Street.
I don't, unfortunately.
That's a shame, because that'd be really interesting. Because presumably, if it was the sort of like this sort of, which I assume it is, it's like a sort of municipal sort of public pump system.
Yeah, well, it was. That's what he.
But if it was, if it was supplied by some dodgy company. Well, they are. Funny enough, there are some of these. There's here we go. So the Southern Vauxhall Waterworks Company, was just a disaster. Right? Just taking water from the Thames to supply these pumps. I mean, there were various other companies as well. The New River Company, I think, basically they were like, we're not even going to bother with the Thames anymore. We're going to take it in over some reservoir over in Hampton or somewhere, rather than. They were trying to fix the problem. But some of them obviously just weren't bothering. It's just like, this is.
And so it was kind of a vicious circle.
Exactly.
The waste went to the river, then the water company took water out of the river and gave it back to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's horrific, isn't it? So, but then it's always like, the politicians are blaming the water companies. It's like, well, the Thames is like literally a sewer. So But anyway, sorry.
Should we talk about? So we've talked a little bit about the background. So we've had what the river was like. We know why people were a bit more concerned about it than usual. We know who was meant to be overseeing it at the time. Should we talk a little bit about why this all came to a head in 1858? Why, what was the sudden
what was the sudden concern?
Yeah, so like, should we talk about toilets, for instance?
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
That fun topic
Yeah,
that everyone's delighted
exactly,
to hear about.
Yeah, well, it was as we said, with the increasing number of people living there, combined with the new sort of gradually people were incorporating a new flushing toilet into their homes, which obviously connected to a sewer system, which connected to the river, which obviously made all this problem much worse because people were trying to get rid of their waste completely rather than simply just sort of burying it in their garden or something. Which you can say yes or you see the downsides of that, but at least it's not going in the river. I don't know, whatever. But
and I think also so you had toilets basically increasing the issue. Linked to the growth in population. On the other side of things, you also had, as we heard from Dickens, these factories that are on the sides of the banks of the Thames. So they were putting industrial waste in this. So there was stuff like ammonia, carbolic acid, and cyanide going into the river as well. And then also you had, because there was so much waste going into it, these sort of blockages were occurring in the Thames, and it was silting up. So someone did a study of the time. Basically, if you threw a barrel into the Thames off London Bridge, it would take somewhere between 3 and 11 weeks to travel down to the sea.
Oh wow!
Because it kept getting caught in these blockages and these silt deposits and stuff. So, it was one thing that was going into the river, but it wasn't. There was so much of it in there; it wasn't actually being able to washed away. So this issue is building up and building up and building up, and then in sort of July, 1850,
it's the high summer. It's classic.
That's the other thing. It's a very
summer.
It's a very, very hot summer. There's very little rain, so the sort of level of the Thames drops anyway. And then, if you interestingly pointed out in Household Words, which is the weekly journal that Dickens kind of oversaw, at the time, July 1858, in the editorial it stated that when the level of the Thames dropped, there was almost as much sewage as water in there.
This is horrific, isn't it?
It's not going anywhere. There's so much of it in there. There's literally no way of getting it, and the smells of just like gets to a point where it's intolerable.
It's just you can't even function. I think people basically just wouldn't go outside.
It's
easier to.
It's really interesting that newspapers started calling around the great thing at the time and producing these cartoons we spoke about earlier. I think it affected all levels of society. So on one hand, Victoria and Albert, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, tried to go on a pleasure cruise down the Thames, but they were forced back because of the smell. They couldn't get down there.
Why would you even bother?
On the other hand, you had boatmen who made their living on taking people down the Thames, but because it was so horrible, no one wanted to go down. So they lost money and they lost livelihood. They lost livelihood at the same time. And then it was just like insane. You had these sort of like grand plans that decided people were thinking about moving the law courts to Oxford because the smell was so bad. Moving Parliament to St Albans, I think, because they couldn't cope. And then also, I think one of the sort of like points that people coalesced around was Michael Faraday, the scientist. He went for a boat trip down the Thames, so he wasn't overly concerned at the time. And then he wrote to the Times a letter called "Observations on the Filth of the Thames," where he'd thrown white pieces of paper into the Thames as he was going down it, and watched them basically be swallowed and turned brown by the things. So people saw this, and it became like a bit of a rallying point to it. But I think also one of the key moments in this, in terms of having an issue and then looking at solutions, was the fact that MPs and Lords started to become directly affected by the issue. Do you want to talk a little bit about
that? Well, I think it was like they were trying to
go about their everyday business, but they were basically banned from the committee rooms in the library, which, if you don't know Parliament, they overlook the Thames because the smell was so bad. No one could go in there. There's the Chancellor in a stoop and trying to cover his mouth and nose as he wanders from room to room, and they tried to soak the curtains in chloride of lime to stop the smell, but that didn't work. So they realised that actually, instead of just ignoring it, because in the first instance they will ignore it because it's too expensive, we don't really want the hassle. And then they decided actually we need to do something about it. So they passed the Metropolis Local Management Amendment Bill, which is a very catchy title, and they passed it in 18 days, which anyone who knows anything about how legislation gets passed, that's an incredibly quick amount of time compared to the months and months it can take. And this basically placed responsibility on solving the crisis as it had become onto the Metropolitan Board of Works, which succeeded, as you said, the Commission.
Well, the Commission was basically useless, and they made the problem worse. The Board of Works, obviously, they had I think their vision was much. Well, wasn't it? Was it not Joseph? You're going to come on to Joseph?
Yeah, we're going to come on to it in a second. But they had a kind of secret weapon, which we'll come on to in a second.
Right.
And the other thing that it actually did was allow them to borrow up to £3 million. To fund the crisis, which is the other main issue that the people overseeing the sewers had, in that they couldn't really do anything because they didn't have any powers to get any money.
Well, I mean, they could do something. They could just not. They could just say they can't deal with it and not. I mean, what? Yeah, carry on. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for it to be. I mean, the water wasn't managed by the municipal commissioners, so I don't know why does the sewer have to be? Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, they were dealing with the problem they had been presented.
Yeah, I guess so.
They couldn't do anything because they didn't have any money.
Yeah, no, I realise that, but why set up a system that's doomed to fail? But yeah.
Go back to 1850s and last.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. Well, no, but yeah.
Okay, so basically, when Parliament was affected,
they
very quickly moved into action. They allowed the board to borrow money. They gave them they said to them specifically, you are solving the crisis.
Yeah.
And they said one other key thing was that the sewage outflows had to be outside the boundaries of London, which seems like common sense, but it took them this long to actually decide on it. And then, should we talk about the man who kind of...
Well, Joseph Bazalgette.
The man who was responsible for this plan.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I suspect you probably know more about this than me. It was his grand vision to create a series of, I think it was a sort of sloping, gravity-led, essentially, system, which moved the sewage out to the east and further out towards the estuary rather than dumping it in the river. And so it sort of is still dumping it in the river, but a bit further
away. Yeah, and he's kind of like the right man in the right place, because he had been a railway planner and engineer in China, Britain. He'd worked for the commission and the Metropolitan Board of Works in sort of more junior roles.
Yeah.
And he had presented a very similar plan to them a few years before, but they rejected it for that because they didn't have enough money and they didn't have to actually go and ask for the money. He'd been promoted to chief engineer just 2 years beforehand, and his promotion had been backed by people like Isambard Kingdom Brunel and John Stephenson, who designed the rocket steam engine. So he had quite a few high-profile supporters.
Yeah.
And his plans were basically to build around 80 miles of brick sewers underground, and 1,000 miles of street-level sewers. So it literally was revolutionising how the sewage actually worked and where it went in London. And as you said, the main aim was to basically push the problem further downstream and get it away from the population centres. I think also one of the key things that you have to admire about him is that when he was designing the pipes, he made a calculation on how much people would need to use, what the diameter needed to be for the most dense area of London, and then he doubled it.
So
he was recognising that he needed room to grow. And to the point that actually, if he hadn't done it, they're estimating that the sewage system would have broken down again in the 1960s when town blocks were introduced.
Oh, really?
But it didn't, because he basically
calculated
in this extra room.
But that, I think where Lord Adonis is correct is that kind of design vision, I suppose, does actually. I can see where he's coming from in admiring that kind of design.
Yeah, you have to admire him. I think also you can't just make a sweeping statement about.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that in some ways, I mean, maybe there is a certain point where, I mean, it depends on how expensive it is. Do you know what I mean? We can't really. We know it's about 282 million in today's money. They borrowed 3 million at the time.
They did. It went up to 6.5 million in the end.
Oh wow! Okay, so it was double. It was actually double that.
Yeah.
So. Okay, which is roughly about £25 per person in the population at the time. Which I don't know what the this is something we can't really judge.
But I think in the end of the day, it was a huge amount of money. For a vast project. Kind of thing. It was. Also, the amazing thing to point out is they were trying to solve a completely different. The wrong problem in many ways, but it still worked. So it basically eradicated cholera in many ways in London, and it cut the levels of typhus and typhoid quite significantly, even though they weren't trying to concentrate on the germ element. So they were still trying to concentrate on miasma theory. But it still worked amazingly well.
Well, I suppose that is a testament to sort of how miasma theory came about, isn't it? It's not. I mean, obviously, it's not precisely correct, but you can see where they're coming from. If something smells bad. It's probably not a good idea to start, hanging around near it. Exactly.
And I think one of the other elements, like, not only did it sort of revolutionise the health in London and how London functioned, it also gave us in many ways the London we know today.
In terms of architecture.
In terms of architecture, I think it's like a key point to kind of raise. And that if you imagine the banks of the Thames, so Victoria, he created 3 embankments around the Thames to basically cover the pipes. And so you have, and this was done by reclaiming bits of the river.
Yeah, I was going to say, so does that sort of mean that the river was much wider?
I think it was a combination of it was wider, and also you had these big mud flats and banks that maybe the water didn't cover the whole stretch, but there were still these kind of like,
because the water comes up quite high, doesn't it?
It does, when it's at high tide you can definitely see it.
So at low tide it must have been. Well, you can just imagine what would be on the mud flats. But anyway,
it was literally anything. So you had these 3 embankments, which one was the Victoria Embankment, which is on the north bank, and it runs kind of from Parliament to Blackfriars Bridge, and along that you have a series of like gardens that go in front of places like government departments and the Savoy Hotel and stuff like that, and it's a very nice place to walk through. And then on the south bank you have the Albert Embankment, which has on that part of it has some of the sort of more iconic buildings in London, such as MI6, which anyone who's watched any of the James Bond films will know.
We'll know that.
St Thomas's Hospital as well. Neither of those buildings would exist if we didn't have the embankment, which goes back to Basilgate and things like that. And also, weirdly enough, the pumping stations that he built have become in some ways kind of iconic. So you have the cross.
Well, they're very distinctive now, aren't they? Because they're obviously still. I mean, they obviously did the job. Well, I don't actually know when they stopped functioning, but presumably they stayed functioning as part of the service for quite a long time.
But also kind of like elaborately decorated.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, they're so distinctive because they're a Victorian style architecture. While obviously, like I say, if it lasts up until the 1960s until now, even then, architecture obviously doesn't look like that anymore.
No, it doesn't. And then I think the Crossness pumping station, which is in Bexley, so southeast London, is actually a tourist attraction in itself now. So it's got a museum dedicated to this very subject. And Abbey Mills pumping station, which is in Stratford. It's right next to the modern pumping station. Really enough, so that's 200 metres away. But that's actually not open to the public or anything. But it's used as a film location. So it's actually Arkham Asylum in Batman Begins.
No, really. It's amazing. Yeah. There's another Abbey Mills in Tooting or Morden. I don't know anything about that, but I don't know if you knew anything about that.
I didn't know.
No, okay. It's fine. But if it's called an Abbey, I mean, I've got nothing. Sorry.
Is there anything? Anything else you want to say on the Great Stink?
There is so much to say about the Great Stink. It's just I find it amazing how people manage to. The main thing that I was amazed about was that despite the fact that the river became increasingly horrific, the water companies still managed to come up with ideas of solving the problem of water purity, water, cleanliness, basically. Creating reservoirs away from the Thames and this kind of stuff. And obviously there are always a couple of rogues who carry on doing it just because they can. And then obviously some of the cartoons from the period really bring to life the horror, basically, of the situation. Yeah, it's just it's actually unimaginable.
Yeah, I think it's also worth pointing out that this didn't just happen in London.
Yeah.
So going back to Dickens's journal Household Words, you have pieces talking about the state of rivers in Manchester and Birmingham as well. And they before London, places like Leicester had actually worked out if you don't put sewage into the river, it will get better.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an issue that all industrial towns had to deal with to some extent. But I think London is a special case because it was just so bad.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was also thinking. I mean, this isn't really strictly speaking related, but it is related, but it's not strictly speaking on this topic. But I was reading earlier. Because obviously we're talking about cesspits and comparison to sewers and that kind of thing, and what the concept of the cesspit was. I mean, if you basically there's this long story short, there's a city in India that's basically been built by a couple of private corporations, and they don't have any sewers, but they do have cesspits, and they're regularly emptied, and there's nothing actually. Apparently, there's nothing specifically wrong with this.
I think that's the thing.
It's just an interesting comparison. I mean, I don't want to get political about it, but obviously there is an interesting comparison here. It's like it is possible to use cesspits in a good way. It's just obviously at the time they thought actually we need a grand new system.
Yeah, well, I think it was linked to the population growth that kind of caught them off guard.
Yeah,
I think they were probably there is clear evidence that they would work.
Yeah.
As long as the key thing is making sure they're emptied regularly, and taken somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's what I mean. Like the authority was I feel that the authority was sort of inflexible or just incapable of dealing with the problem. I mean, like I was talking about this city, they 25 years ago it didn't even exist, and now it's like this major city which has literally no sewers.
Yeah.
And it's completely fine. Well, mostly. I mean, obviously it's not exactly New York, but yeah, it's just an interesting comparison. But yeah, so that might be something worth looking at if you're interested in this kind of thing. I think just the planning urban infrastructure in general is a really interesting concept, because you've got to plan a system for lots of people, which obviously grows over time, almost exponentially. Yeah.
I think. Do you have any further reading before you do a quick conclusion?
Well, I mean, no, other than those few things, no, really, not especially.
I have two. I've got one Hot Summer by Rosemary Ashton, which talks about the summer of 1858, and kind of like gives you a sort of glimpse into it. And then also Thames Sacred River by Peter Ackroyd, which is history of the Thames, but also covers quite in horrific detail the Great Stink itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have a quick last, like, one sentence conclusion to the episode? What people should take away from it?
I think
non-political way.
Well, no, it's difficult. It's difficult not to be, because it is very much a planning problem. But I suppose try and get the whole picture.
Yeah, is
my final comment. When somebody presents you with a historical legend, try to understand it completely.
Which what Footnotes of History tries to do.
Indeed, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I thought we did that quite well in the New York draft riots.
Yeah.
And indeed, some of the
other
other
episodes you should check out.
Indeed, footnotesofhistory.com/2. But do you have any of this?
Well, no, I think you've covered it pretty well there. That making sure you look at the whole picture, but also I think it's quite interesting that a kind of horrific situation has given us such a different London, a lot more now in the embankments, and given us. Also, I feel like it's given us a hero that people not maybe will really recognise in Basilgate. Not every hero is kind of like leading battles or leading armies or passing massive legislation, but doing sort of intricate design work. He's overseeing so much of the detail as well. And without him, the project probably would never have been done. In the way that it was.
You'd still be living with it now. Probably not.
The cesspit probably over.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, okay. So I can hear the music fading in as we speak. So maybe that's really it. Thanks for listening to Footnotes of History. For more episodes, visit footnotesofhistory.com and subscribe. Or, if you want to suggest an episode to us, email us on episodes@footnotesofhistory.com. You can also follow us on social media @FOH Podcast for Twitter, and we're also on Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for listening.